Now you see, whenever I'm making new parts from old parts for a project, I don't just want them to work as they worked before. I want to make sure that as I'm building them, they work as good as they possibly can. Maybe take the best part of this design, take the best part of that design, put them together to make the ultimate best design. And also, these companies, they spend millions of dollars in research on making parts. You would think that they would be as good as possible, but don't give those guys too much credit.
And now, you're watching the last month TPing somebody's house was just a normal high school prank, and now it is the ultimate flex channel of YouTube. Welcome to Bodie Vision.
Hey, so what's happening? Thank you so much for joining me on yet another video. So the way that stuff usually goes around here is I figure stuff out one day, and then I kind of gather all that information together, and then I explain to you the next day on how I did it, because I don't want to spend time figuring things out and then filming in between, because a lot of the times as I'm figuring the things out, I don't necessarily do the first trial, or I don't necessarily do the first thing that I thought, and then I change it, and then once I have a broad outlook of what exactly I'm going to do, then I turn it into a video. But with this, with the steering, let me just show you where I'm at right now. So my main goal with this entire thing is I wanted to keep the stock Accord steering column, because I want to be able to use all the signals. I want to use my ignition, and the steering column right down there plugs into the fuse box, and that fuse box has to do with all the lighting of the car, and I will still be using that. So if you can see right here, and you see the wheel right there, as I'm turning it, we are doing its thing. Big angle too, boy, what's up with that? And then this way, back that way. I mean, that's crazy, pretty cool. And I don't have anything hooked up, so it's just leaking a little bit, but either way, it is working just like it should. And keep in mind down there, that's the GTO steering rack. So if you can see down there, that's the actual GTO steering rack. So I don't know if you can see it going in between the headers, how much room I have with everything going on, and it's rubbing on the firewall just a little bit. But with the amount of building out that I have to do, I'm not worried about it whatsoever. I'm just happy that it's actually working. So now that yesterday I figured it all out, I'm just gonna go ahead and tear this down and then explain to you and show you on how I did everything and how I spent $0 doing it all. So the first thing that I'm looking at as I'm trying to get the steering column from the Honda Accord to match down with the steering rack from the 2004 GTO is we gotta look at the output styles, or the input styles of the shaft. So this right here, this is called a double D style, meaning it's just a D over here and it's a D over there, and then there's a flat edge. So if you take this right here, what that measures out to be is roughly 0.625. So this is a 5/8 shaft. And then what you got to do for this one is you got to measure it and you got to count the teeth. So there's 29 splines on here. So we got to go from a 29 splined shaft, and then we got to get a U-joint that is just one of these, a steering U-joint, and the U-joint's got to go from 29 splines all the way to 5/8 double D. Now I was looking through a bunch of websites trying to find a steering U-joint that went from 29 spline to 5/8 double D. I found a whole bunch of ones that were 30 teeth, some that were 26, some that were 32. Now I don't know if that's a more common size for people doing stuff like this, or if that's like a G-body size or a Mustang size or just something along those lines, and these people aren't making parts for 1988 Honda Accords because they're not so common. A lot of these things are American hot rod styles, and I just don't know, maybe I wasn't looking in the right place. And also, let me just back up just a little bit. It's not just important that we go from the right output to input, input to output. The distance between the two has to be correct also, meaning the end of the steering column has to be a certain distance away from the end of the steering rack, because if we get the right sizes and then the U-joint is too short, it's not going to fit. If we get the U-joint to be where there's a gap in between, that's not going to work either. So that's another thing that we had to consider. So the right inputs and outputs, and also the distance between the steering column to the distance between the steering rack. All of those things we had to consider, and that's what I had to consider yesterday as I was making this whole thing work. So the first thing that I wanted to address is how I was going to make that U-joint work as far as going from the right outputs and inputs and inputs and outputs. So what I ended up doing is, this is just one of the ends that was from the Honda Accord, and this is that 29 tooth spline style. And then we also had this, which is the D style, or the double D style, the double D 5/8 from the 2004 GTO. So I took this and I cut off about 75% of it, or I cut it at the about 75% mark, meaning this used to be on there, then I cut it off, and then I cut off about 25% of the Accord one, meaning 75, 25, or I don't know, I might be saying it backwards, but either way you can understand. And these are about the same width, so this is what I cut off from the Accord, this is what I cut off from the GTO. The width is exactly the same, and it has the exact same T swivel thing, so everything is just fine. So now what we have is, we have 5/8 double D. This is from the GTO, and this is what was on the actual steering rack. A bolt just runs through here. This fits on the rack perfectly. This is from GM. That's what came with it. We're not using any special parts. I didn't spend any money at all. And then this is our 29 spline thing for the Accord. So now that's welded together, and it's welded really well on both sides, inside and out, so I don't have any question that this isn't gonna be fine at all, and this works. So this is our U-joint, and also I could have maybe hunted one down, but keep in mind those U-joints, they're about $50, and $50 saved is $50 that I can put into something else that I'm gonna need in the future. So now that I have my U-joint made, the next thing that I wanted to focus on was the distance between the tip of the steering column to the tip of the actual steering rack. So what I did inside the car is I put this on the rack as it was sitting there, and then I held this up to the steering column, and the steering column was way overhanging, or this part of the steering column was way lower, meaning I had to get rid of a certain amount. So what I ended up doing is I just took a measurement based on this edge, and I wanted to see how far away that was from this edge, and that distance was about 4 inches, meaning this spline was 4 inches further down. So now I couldn't just come up 4 inches and cut it off, because then I would lose all my splines, because if you're familiar with a Honda steering rack, it just has splines at the last maybe 2 or 3 inches, and then it's smooth. So what I had to do was I had to cut at the very tops of the splines, which are about down here, and then I had to cut at the very top, because we had to keep all of these splines, because that has the section that we need, this little section right here, because our U-joint needs to go through that, and the bolt has to go through that hole and then through there, and then you can see right down in that little crease, that's where the bolt has to go. Now keep in mind, when I was figuring out all these distances, I had this set centered on there, so that way I had a little bit of adjustment to go up, or a little bit of adjustment to go down if I needed to. Every single thing that I'm making, I'm mocking it up to be centered, so that way if my measurements are off by a 1/16 of an inch, which is very possible, I'll be just fine, because I have about a 1/4 inch of leeway. So another thing that I wanted to focus on is something that I mentioned at the very beginning of this video. So the style before was just, this would slide, this was in the GTO, and this was fixed, and that was actually part of that U-joint right there, meaning the only way for the steering rack to come out of the car was for it to be unbolted at the 2 bolts, slide forward, and then slide down. But now the Honda style, or the way that it currently is without unbolting the actual steering rack. This can slide up those splines. So it's bolted right here. It can slide all the way up the splines to right about here, and that gives us enough room at this end when this goes from running position unbolt, take the bolt out, slide it all the way up. Now it can disconnect from the steering rack itself. Then you can just worry about dropping out the steering rack, because it's a really big pain in the ass to try to remove it from the GTO, and especially with the headers being right there, the steering rack actually runs in between the headers. I know that's common for a lot of V8s, and that's something that I'm not so familiar with. So I wanted to make it better to where I can disconnect the steering rack without actually having to unbolt it. I can just get this out of there. So now actually the other side of that coin is I can put the steering rack in there, I can put the steering column in there, and then I don't have to touch anything. I could just slide that U-joint up the column and then plop it right down on the rack, and it is good to go, as opposed to fighting to struggle to place the column up to where it fits on that U-joint and then bolting it in. That was just a horrible design on the GTO, and I didn't want to deal with that on my current build. I just wanted to make it better, and I think I definitely did just that. So it's a little bit weird for me to take everything out just to explain it to you, but that's what I'm doing, and that's why I do it. So now I guess let's just put it back in and see what else we have going on. And now what I want to do next, we actually jump forward just a little bit, but all I did was I got my seat thrown in here, and this seat will be refinished before the car is done. But what I want to do, now that I'm sitting in here nice and comfortable, one thing that I noticed, the relationship between my steering wheel and my shifter, this is a little bit too far back, but it also has this little bend right in here. So I'm gonna kind of cut this up, weld it together, and put this about right here. So that way this relationship can be a lot better, because as I put it in 2nd, 4th, and 6th, that's a little bit too far back, and it's kind of butting together with my elbow. So I just wanna go ahead and get rid of this little angle and then improve on that.
There's a transmission on the way of my gas pedal. God damn it, the thing snapped off. I don't even know.
Alright, so we got the 3 pedals down there, gas pedal, brake pedal, clutch pedal. Now everything that I've added, every modification that I've made, nothing at all gets in the way of anything as far as those bars that I put on the floor getting in the way of the brake pedal or the clutch, because the brake pedal swings so much higher than those bars that I've added. The only thing that's in the way is the transmission is actually hitting the gas pedal. But what I thought is if I just moved each pedal over just a little bit by actually cutting them off, putting a bracket on there, and moving them just a little bit. And again, I've done this before. If you ever do a right-hand drive conversion on a Civic and you don't have manual pedals from the right-hand drive Civic, it's a little bit different. So you actually have to cut off the pedals, weld on the pedal. And the person whose car that I did that to has been driving around for probably a year and a half now, and it's never had an issue. There's not a lot of force put on a gas pedal. It's just, you know, it's not a lot of force at all, so it's gonna be completely fine. Man, so today we were just powering right through it. Steering column in, steering rack in, shifter exactly where I want it. It was a little bit off, cut it, put it where I wanted it, weld it in. Now that's good. The gas pedal is gonna be the same exact way. It's just a little bit off. I'm gonna cut it, weld it, put it where I want it, and we are just powering right through this, like I was saying. So man, I don't know what's next. It seems like everything should be going a lot quicker now that there's a lot less major figuring out to do. I feel like getting the engine in, getting the rear end in, getting all that stuff figured out was a lot of the time spent on this project. Now it's just a matter of finding something, addressing it, attacking it, fixing it, and moving forward. Now, I know thus far this video has been a lot of talking and a lot of explaining, but unfortunately that's just how it goes when we are figuring things out. But before we go, I want to invite you to check out the merch. The link will be down in the description below. We put a whole bunch of time, effort, and energy into the merch to give it the same exact feel and vibe that my shop does, as well as the way that I work. Without cutting corners, we want everything to be high quality and to show that we're doing things right the very first time. These designs, everything about the merch, the quality, everything, I want that to represent who I am, represent what the shop is about, and just all of those things. So I think in the next video we're going to figure out a lot more stuff. Maybe I'll cut the gas pedal, maybe I'll cut some other stuff, maybe I'll just cut the entire car in half, and I don't know. And also, if you guys are just sick of hearing me talk, let me let you know that very soon we're going to get into painting the entire car, the engine bay, the door jambs, the exterior. That's going to be a lot of progress. Also, we have the body work to do. I was talking about custom wide body. I think we are going to have to do that just because of the track width. So all of that is yet to come. If you are looking forward to that, make sure you subscribe, like this video, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. You know what it is, YouTube. I will see you on the next one. I'm out.